Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. While the football world sets its sights on Santa Clara for Super Bowl 60, for the next few weeks, Bird's Nest Media is actually going to be taking its attention and focusing it on the events happening in Milano Cortina in Italy for the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. And it's an exciting time for the sports world anytime that the Olympics comes up. NBC has the broadcast rights for Super Bowl 60, and even Super Bowl 60 has been taking a little bit of a back seat for the Olympics on NBC's broadcasts. Now, there are a lot of incredible storylines that we're going to be following throughout these games over the course of these next several weeks in February, but the Winter Olympics officially kicked off this evening with the opening ceremony. And the focal point for the ceremony was at San Siro Stadium in Milan. But in a proof of concept for what could actually happen in Los Angeles in 2028, because Los Angeles is going to be having the Olympic ceremony in two stadiums in LA. They're going to be having it at the LA Memorial Coliseum, which was where the Olympics were held in 1984. And it's also going to be having some portions of the Olympic ceremonies occurring at what is officially known as the stadium in Inglewood, but it's really SoFi Stadium for those of us who know it. For a proof of concept of that, the opening ceremonies in Milano Cortina actually had sections occurring in multiple cities in Cortina d'Ampezzo, Livigno, and Predazzo, in addition to the main focal points of the ceremonies, which were occurring in Milan. Now, one of the challenges in this edition of the Winter Games is actually how spread out it is. It's several hours of a drive between Milan and many of these outlying cities. There are 4 cities, 4 clusters of venues. This is going to be one of the most challenging Olympics to date in terms of venues and logistics, moving players, fans, officials from the Olympic village all the way around these areas. It's going to be a really interesting challenge. But as I've been having discussions with people who are familiar with the Milano Cortina operation, as well as with IOC officials, I've been met with nothing but confidence that Milano Cortina is ready to show off. And if the opening ceremonies that occurred are any indication, Milano Cortina is ready to go. Even in this multi-city opening ceremony, things seem to run extraordinarily smoothly, something that was called out by first-time Olympics NBC commentator Shaun White. Shaun White is a notable snowboarder, but he is going to be celebrating his first Winter Olympics this year where he's not competing. On the broadcast on NBC, he shared some thoughts saying that he really applauds the Olympics. Quote, "It's one of those things where it'd be so unfortunate to miss your first opening ceremony, any opening ceremony. And the fact that they've split it up and given those athletes an opportunity to attend, I think that's really great." One of the important things is that given the distance of the various locales from San Siro Stadium in Milan, it's, again, a real challenge to move athletes out there, and especially given the fact that probably when you're watching this, there are going to be athletes who are going to be competing. Remember, Milan, Italy is several hours ahead of the United States. Again, this is one of the reasons why I think that these ceremonies went off with relatively good signs here. And it's always a great sign when the opening ceremony goes off without a hitch really at all. I remember quite well the technical snafus that occurred in the Vancouver 2010 Olympics. There was a hydraulic arm that froze, didn't raise for the lighting of the Olympic cauldron. Or in 2014, when in Sochi, Russia, the final ring of the Olympic rings didn't open during that. And there were definitely some indications of that definitely seemed to be a little bit of a harbinger of things that could potentially have occurred over the course of those games. Now, fortunately, again, the games tend to go off without a hitch. The host cities have been planning these games for years, and the same is true of Milano Cortina in Italy. Everything was ready to go, and hopefully, again, this is a sign of things to come for fans, for athletes, for everybody who's involved with those games, because it's going to be really, really really critical, especially given how spread out these games are. This is, by the way, the first time that the Olympics have been officially awarded to more than one host city. So Milano Cortina, Milan, Italy, and Cortina d'Ampezzo, two host cities hosting these games. Now, one of the highlights of the Olympic opening ceremonies is the parade of athletes, where we get to see all of the athletes, at least all of the countries who are sending athletes to these games, marching into the stadium. And this is always something that's filled with tradition. We see Greece coming in first because they were the founder of the Olympic movement. Ancient Greece was where this whole thing kind of started, where it has its roots. Even at the end of the 19th century, turn of the 20th century, when the Olympic movement in its modern form started to take shape, the Olympics were centered around Greece. So Greece, being sort of the founder of this Olympic movement, is really central in why they get to march in first. And then at the tail end of the parade of athletes is the host country, which is Italy this year. Joining the parade of nations for the first time this year in the Winter Olympic Games were Benin, Guinea-Bissau, and the United Arab Emirates. So those countries for the first time are sending athletes to the Olympic Winter Games, which, again, some of these countries, it's going to be interesting to see how they compete, especially given the fact that there's very little snow in more than a handful of those guys. But it will definitely be interesting. It's been done before. We know the Jamaican bobsled team's story, Cool Runnings, is a very popular movie. So definitely something not unheard of. And then we also had two countries that were not represented in the parade of athletes. Those countries were Russia and Belarus. Russia and Belarus remain suspended thanks to the war in Ukraine. This war does violate the Olympic truce, which, as I reported back in November, was passed with a wide margin by the United Nations. Athletes from Russia and Belarus are allowed to compete once they're certified as individual neutral athletes in individual events. There can't be teams in these athletes, but these athletes will compete as individuals. They will not officially represent their countries in the broadcast and in the medal ceremonies. Individual neutral athletes will have a particular emblem that will be used as the flag. And there was also a special anthem that was composed. These were designed for the 2024 games in Paris, and these are being carried over to the 2026 games here in Milano Cortina. Now, there are 7 women from Belarus and 13 men and women from Russia that will be competing under this banner. And they will, again, compete in individual sports such as alpine skiing, speed skating, luge, freestyle, figure skating, and more. These are, again, individual sports. You won't see them participating as teams in competitions like ice hockey, for example. Now, these principles of the Olympic truce, which I alluded to, were actually found throughout the opening ceremony, which was titled Armonia. Now, Director of Ceremonies for the Milano Cortina 2026 Games, Now, the principles of the Olympic truce are actually found throughout the opening ceremony. The ceremony was titled Armonia. And Director of Ceremonies for Milano Cortina 2026, Maria Lara Iasconi, spoke about the theme ahead of the games. In fact, the entire ceremony was designed to inspire athletes to compete to the best of their ability and inspire the world as we rally behind this idea of sports can be a uniting factor. And this was something that kind of resonated through as we heard IOC President Kirsty Coventry, who is presiding over her first Olympic Games of either variety this year, as she gave some inspirational words and shared some of her own moments that stood out from her during her time as an Olympian for Zimbabwe.
When I was an athlete, this was always my most favorite moment. Watching that flame light up in the night, that's when I knew the games were real. Now, it's your turn, my fellow Olympians. Now, it's your moment. It's your games. We cannot wait to watch you, to cheer for you, to be inspired by you, to see your courage, your strength, to see the best of humanity shine before the world. Let your flame spark hope. Let it ignite joy and light the way for all of us.
President Coventry did, in fact, get to carry the Olympic flame in part of its final leg as it made its way to the Olympic cauldron. She spoke about the message that this particular symbol of the Olympic Games brings to all of those who are watching, and in particular to the Games itself, ahead of the Games opening officially.
Exactly, and it's going to end up in the Olympic Stadium, where we will have the opening ceremony, where the athletes are going to then take that light on with them and continue to spread it. And we do it. It's a good reminder of the values and how sport can be neutral, and it can unify all kinds of ages and people and backgrounds, and it's very symbolic.
And again, the ceremony concludes with, again, this symbol, this lighting of the Olympic cauldron, which in this case it was multiple cauldrons because there were multiple host cities. One cauldron in Milan and one cauldron in Cortina d'Ampezzo with the Olympic flame. Both of the Olympic flame kind of diverted and went to both of those cities. It was a flame that began its journey, again, going back to the fact that Greece started this whole movement, began its journey in Olympia, Greece, and was lit in a cauldron that's actually reportedly going to be doing some performances for visitors as those visitors stop by and see this important symbol of the Games. Over the next 2 weeks, athletes from around the world will compete in various winter sports: hockey, curling, figure skating, luge and bobsled, snowboarding, speed skating, and new to the Olympics this year, ski mountaineering, among so many others. And for Team USA, there's going to be a lot of notable athletes that are going to be taking their shot at gold this year. One of the most recognizable names is going to be Lindsey Vonn. She has been a stalwart in Olympic skiing for the last 16 years, since she debuted at the Vancouver Games in 2010. 41-year-old Vonn is one of 6 women to have won World Cup races in all 5 alpine skiing disciplines, but recent knee surgeries have left her Olympic hopes for 2026 in doubt. She did clear qualifiers in the Olympics this go-round and does seem to be good to go based off of some of the footage that we've seen of her leading up to these games. So we will certainly see how she fares. That's going to be a really inspirational story for people, regardless of what the outcome is. Also, some big skiers to watch are Michaela Schifrin, who is a 2-time gold medalist and will be competing in slalom and giant slalom, and Ryan Cochran-Siegel, who is the only American to have won a gold medal in alpine skiing in 2022, looking to add to that this year. In speed skating, we've got an incredible athlete in Jordan Stoltz. He's from Wisconsin, and he's probably one of the best speed skaters there are. He's a favorite to win multiple disciplines in speed skating this year, while Erin Jackson on the women's side is another favorite, though another American, Corinne Stoddard, is probably going to hope to dethrone the defending gold medalist in Jackson. So definitely will be interesting to watch. We also take a look at ice hockey, and for the first time since the 2014 Sochi Games, the NHL is going to allow players to participate in the ice hockey competitions in the Olympics. And in fact, the NHL is taking a couple weeks off due to it. So if you're a Flyers fan, you're watching the Flyers and you're wondering why the Flyers aren't playing for the next couple of weeks, this is why. The Olympics are happening. The NHL is taking a back seat right now, so that way players who want to compete for the various teams can have the opportunity to do so. There are no Flyers who are competing on the U.S. hockey team, but there are definitely a few Flyers who are competing on the international teams. Travis Sanheim is a defenseman and alternate captain for the Flyers. The 29-year-old so far this season has 6 goals and 18 assists for the Orange and the Black, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does on the world stage. And, of course, we hope he saves a bit, too, for the Flyers when he returns, maybe gets a little bit going in that regard. Additionally, probably one of the best players for the Flyers so far this season is goalie Dan Vladar. He's going to be playing for Czechia this year. The Flyers have been 17-8 with him in the net. He is averaging 2.47 goals against this season, with 740 saves through this point in the 2025-26 season. So there's definitely a lot to look for in these Olympic Games, and I'm going to try here at Birds Nest Media trying to bring you as much coverage as possible of these Olympic Winter Games, because the world is setting its eyes on Italy for the next couple of weeks. It's the biggest stage in sports, and we're obviously going to see what happens. But, as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What are you excited for about these Olympic Winter Games? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Birds Nest Podcast. You can support the Birds Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Birds Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to us on Substack as well to get emails directly to you with the latest in Birds Nest Media coverage. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL and Olympic coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. And let's go Eagles. And let's go Team USA.